IVM.
Hello and welcome to Simplified. Oh, sorry, that's the KFC ad.
Okay.
This is.
Are you having KFC in the morning?
No, I wish if dreams had wings and all that.
But you're having wings.
Yeah.
Nice.
No, this is Simplified, which is also like the fast food equivalent to podcasts. Should be an occasional indulgence, and we hope it's not your main meal. So welcome aboard.
Wow, I feel that analogy could have, if you told us about this like before the recording, I think there's a lot more we could have done with that analogy.
We could have battered it.
Oh,
Actually, one thing that you won't get, unlike what will happen if you eat fast food, is that you won't become intellectually overweight if you listen to Simplified. So that's good. You can just eat all the Simplified you can, and you'll still be nice and intellectual lightweight. No problem.
Sriket, anything to add to this? Would you like a side of? Would you like to add a side of Sriket to this?
Sriket is beating his breast.
having just woken up literally less than 10 minutes ago.
You're yet to do your mukh pooper.
Yeah, I think the idea of fast food early in the morning, I'm still just thinking about maybe some MTR or something.
MTR, as in like the
Meter.
As in Mawali tiffin rooms.
Wow. Okay. Wow. He knows the full form also. Don't mess with the advertising guy.
So, what is the most ridiculous breakfast you had? Like, what was the most unusual breakfast you had?
I have all kinds of garbage, but I mean,
I will tell you mine.
Somebody else's proper food is not country. It doesn't count, Sriket.
So the first time I came to Bombay was for a Scrabble tournament, which was 2 days, and obviously, like I had no clue of what non-Mallu food was. Although, like I spent a while in engineering college, but so the safe thing to eat obviously is like idli vada, whatever, right? But I only like the vada basically. So this was I think at Kalyan Junction. I was waiting for my train back to Kerala. So I said, "Can I have a plate of vada?" So it's like, "You want only the vada?" I'm like, yeah, only the vada. So he gave me a plate of vadas, which were like what goes inside the vada pav. So, and I was too nervous to, sort of.
Yeah, the keto vada pav. This makes sense, right?
Yeah, without the carbs.
For me, I was in the Philippines. It was actually a proper breakfast for somebody else, but I'm going to break my own rule over here. We were just taken aback because they gave us. So Philippines is very heavy on rice. So they gave us rice and a little tin of one of the packaged meat or something. And that was a weird combination to have early in the morning, but hey, it worked.
The weirdest thing I've had is in a large industrial establishment where they have proper canteen workers, canteen and all. And
is that what they call Malad these days?
Yeah, they're even bigger than Malad. And I'm there because I just like passed my engineering, so I'm doing some kind of training there. And it's literally first day on the job, I think. And I'm hanging around these guys, and somebody says, "Would you like to have a biscuit sandwich?" And it sounded interesting, so I said, "Okay." And what the said biscuit sandwich was, it's a saucer with 4 gluco biscuits, Parle G, with gathia on those gluco biscuits, another 4 biscuits on top, and the whole thing dunked in chai. One entire glass of chai goes into it. And then you eat that whole soggy mess. That's another
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's
like surprisingly okay to eat. Yeah, it's
yeah, I mean, when you're right out of engineering college, I suppose, yes.
Yeah. Oh, we would have eaten anything. I mean, at least in Manipal, when I was there, it was the chapatis were indistinguishable from cardboard, basically. Yeah, actually, there were no cardboard cartons in Manipal because most of the people had, most of it was already served in the messes. So,
morning Amazon packages come in, no one sees where they're disposed.
Right. I don't know how we're going to segue into the topic, but
wait, Sriket has to.
Thanks, you forgot me. Just because I came later. But no, with breakfast. I think it was. I think I was with my family and we were taking a road trip to Udaipur and from Ahmedabad, and we stopped at one of the a very very remote trucker dhaba kind of place, and of course, I mean, they had normal breakfast. They had poha and stuff like that on the menu, but I'm posh like that. I asked for a menu. The guy was really perplexed and he got me something resembling a menu. And he had and for some reason, the menu was quite I mean, they attempted to make it like a normal menu of some sort. And they had a sandwich on it and all that. So I asked for a vegetable sandwich, and well, I got some approximation of a vegetable sandwich, which is not the worst thing. But to top it off, I was like, thoda sugar also I will get into my system. I asked for a butterscotch ice cream at the end of it for breakfast. And at the end, I got an ice cream, which was vanilla ice cream with cute little cubes of butter cut and put on top of it.
Did they add scotch? That would have been interesting. That would have made an interesting breakfast.
That was not done, although I would have appreciated the gesture or at least the completeness of it. But yes, the butter was definitively there.
Yeah, you feel like they missed a trick over there. Like if they took the effort of adding little cubes of butter, I feel like they should definitely have thought of the scotch as well. But it is okay. We will give these dhabas some leeway.
They knew the highway was coming from Ahmedabad, so they didn't want to shock me so much.
Anyway, thanks for that question, Tony, because usually when there are food-related questions so early, I feel hungry, but now I feel repelled enough to, continue intermittent fasting till dinner time. So thank you for this, Tony. I will call you every morning at 7 to make sure I stick to my diet. All right, what are we talking about?
Okay, yeah. So before we get into our zingers for the day, I think we should.
I see what you did there.
We definitely have to acknowledge that the secret ingredient of our KFC recipe is the secret life of Sriket.in.
Oh, yes.
Actually, our one of our fans, I think it's fair to call him a fan.
Yes.
Yeah, if they take this effort, then yeah.
At Dumberdol, Dumberdol on Twitter, went ahead and created the secret life of Sriket.in. So check that out. Except you have to misspell Sriket's name, which is not very hard to do. SRIKET.in. Check that out.
Yeah.
And
the only thing
thanks
left is for
Abhishek.
Sriket to actually have a secret life. That's saucy enough. Worthy.
That's all.
That's the you don't even know he has it. That's how secret.
Yeah. So that spelling of Sriket, like Mansur Ali Khan Patodi, is missing one eye. Sorry.
Wow. At this point, we might as well migrate the URL to the public life of Sriket.com.
That's an excellent idea. So whoever's listening to this, who has idea and what do we do on the public life of Sriket.in? And please do not misspell public, especially by missing out the L. That would be
Oh,
wonderful.
Please don't.
Can we quickly move on?
Okay,
yes,
so it's a good thing that we're talking about defamatory content and all, because today we are discussing the IT rules of 2021, which have been in the news, as opposed to the IT rule number 1, which is, have you tried turning it off and turning it on?
I thought you were going to say something like a random IT rule that your IT department will have for your office laptops. Have you guys faced any issues like that since you guys are working remotely for at Tony and Sriket, since you're working remotely for big companies?
I mean, I had a major issue last year where one of my screen literally was on the blink, right? It was randomly blinking every couple of minutes and it was becoming really difficult to work. And the IT guy is trying to diagnose it remotely. Eventually, he raises a ticket and raises all this thing, and they come, they replace my display, they replace the motherboard, all of that they replace. And once they finish replacing it, the thing's still blinking. And I'm like, what the hell? And then I realized the problem was, when you disconnect your charger, the screen blinks. The charger was not connecting properly.
Oh.
So they finished replacing everything and then realized there's no charger problem. not even the battery problem, it was a charger connection problem. And then eventually they finally changed the charger as well. So they effectively replaced the entire laptop because they couldn't diagnose the problem properly.
Wonderful. And Secretary of State, Antony Blinken.
Wow.
Anthony, oh my God.
Wow.
Good coffee, I must say today. Good coffee today.
I'm going to call the blue screen of death on this ramble because we've gone on for 12 minutes without getting into the topic.
To the point.
This is why you should listen to Pink Floyd more, Tony. Like they have some songs in which like the vocals start like in about 8 minutes. And
Was there one silent song as well? Like 4 minute 33 seconds?
Oh, that's John Cage's 433. Which is a fascinating little comment, and I'd love to know what you think about it, because both Sriketan and Naren are reasonably into music.
No,
so
that's the only song I can recreate.
No. But the thing is, to recreate it properly, you need to have your instruments with you. So you can't just sit in silence for 4 minutes 33 seconds. So the idea is like a full orchestra has to perform it by sitting over there with their instruments. So the idea for that song is all the uncomfortable silence from both the performers and the audience that's supposed to make it up. It's quite an interesting thought, actually. And there is an album of covers, yes.
This is what today's episode is going to be, yeah?
No. Okay, so
today's episode is about IT rules.
IT rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, so getting back to the IT rules, right? So I think we've had multiple discussions even earlier about how the internet is the largest human experiment, and it is a flawed one at that. And there needs to be some way to allow free speech while also making it suitable for public consumption, with very much the L in it. So we've discussed previously about Facebook's attempt at a Supreme Court and things like that, and how damn difficult it is to do, because how do you get consensus on what is allowed and what is not?
Yeah.
And to make all our lives easier, the IT rules 2021 have come in. So it basically means that like everything, daddy will tell you what to do, so you have to follow it. But there is an interesting sort of, and to be fair, it is required that, there is a framework in which, speech and content online is regulated in a manner. I wouldn't say, I'm not sure if regulated is the right term, but, made fit for normal consumption, right? And there was an interesting piece of news recently in the newly elected Kerala government. One of the ministers actually said that, there are so many of these serials which promote superstitions, unscientific stuff, and misogyny. Therefore, we are considering, censorship of serials, right? So my first reaction was, hey, great. This is the need of the hour, because like everyone watches these damn serials from, 7 to 10 p.m. and it's not really helping, society in that direction. But I think by and large, we should all agree that censorship of any form is not ideal, right? What do you guys think?
No, like there were so many various other incidents that I was thinking of, and all these are things that we know. Like many of us cheered when Trump was taken off Twitter, for instance. But in retrospect, is that a good thing or bad thing? Many liberal proponents who are our heroes, they said that it was a bad thing in the long run, including a lot of leaders in Europe. You take that as an example, or you take, for example, revisionism, where those statues and all were taken down last year during the BLM protests. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing, right? You can't, to one extent, yes, you shouldn't celebrate these heroes, but then people should be made aware. So is it just enough to add that, oh, by the way, this guy's statue is over here, but he was a jackass in his time? The thing that was proposed on Netflix, I think, some time back. Don't hide like this story, but be aware of what was done. Maybe is labeling then the way to go? I really don't know. I don't know if there is like a clear-cut answer. And another thing that happened, interestingly enough, last week or so was the Facebook Supreme Court, or whatever they call that thing, the oversight board, ruling that Trump will stay off the platform. But hey, don't leave it to us to make this decision. It should be a Facebook. Facebook needs to have rules around these things, and then we will judge this against that. So I've heard a lot of analysis on this, who was right, who was wrong, what is the right way to deal with this. And many people whose opinions I agree with pretty much 100% of the time, they're still caught between this, okay, was it right to deplatform Trump and all that? I think what your question was really, it kind of comes from the same thing. There really is no precedent to something like this. And, I'm reminded of one article I read a while back, which was, are humans even ready for the internet right now? Humans evolved and they're kind of wired to be in societies of 50 to 100 people max. And as Sapiens fans, all of us know basically what I'm talking about over here. Suddenly now everybody having all the knowledge in the world, human brains haven't evolved to deal with that just yet. So no answers. I have no answers. I've rambled for 5 minutes, but I don't have an answer. So yes, I am a marketer.
Yeah. Yeah, but I mean, this also, I mean, the classic, the OG of the censorship question in some ways in modern times is in 2016, the Mein Kampf came out of copyright. And for the first time in post-war Germany, it got the right to actually get published. And there was, I mean, legally it had the right. And even now, I mean, but then there was a huge controversy and conversation around it. And eventually, they have published the Mein Kampf, but it comes with commentary. So with sentences, there's like a lot of commentary around it where he maybe says something about the Jews or says something about some other racist statements. And there's commentary under it saying he's lying. This is false. Like it's like a live fact check in a book. So it's a book with commentary. That's the only version that's allowed to be released in Germany of the Mein Kampf. And then you can look at it from two perspectives. I mean, he's effectively widely pronounced as the most evil man in history, and his book is among the most racist books ever. That's without doubt. But then again, it is censorship. You're treating an entire country like children, where you're not allowing them to read a text and make their own judgments on it. But then again, we also see something what Trump did. I mean, at the end of the day, Trump was given the benefit of free speech, and true free speech advocates would say everything that he said at the Capitol before the riot was free speech. But then again, what followed was, I mean, you cannot not say that that was not an incitement by Trump, right? And so, yeah, there is that, the assumption of free speech is that, oh, everyone will take critical reasoning and apply it to every piece of speech they see, and therefore free speech should be allowed. But then again, society doesn't function that way. Like there are, as Chuck, you mentioned with the internet and with mass communication overall, people react differently. Some react viscerally, some react with reason. And when different people react differently, it does eventually come down where a certain level of criticality and certain level of, so to speak, censorship needs to be implemented. Otherwise, I mean, who's to say any kind of speech that can absolutely destroy the world in some ways not be applied?
Yeah, the problem, according to, I mean, as far as I can see, is you cannot empower anyone to censor anything, to be a censor, because those people or that person is just as susceptible to the impulses that the general public are. So there is absolutely no way of ensuring that the person who's in charge of censoring will do a good job. So it's absolutely a bad idea to have any kind of censorship law at all. It has to be a battle. So now take the case of Trump. So Trump was evidently manipulating public, and he was like passing completely false narratives, and people were swallowing it because that's what people do. That's how social evolution has taken place. And I really, actually, it's very instructive how he did it. So any of us can do it. Any party, anyone can do it.
It's actually quite interesting, Naren, just on the point that you were making about the Trump supporters thing. One of the guys who was that QAnon shaman, the guy wearing the Viking horns in the Capitol who went there, that guy's lawyer actually made an argument saying that the people who actually followed Trump he literally said this, are dumb. And so with all of these dumb people, you can't allow unrestricted free speech because they will literally follow what this guy was metaphorically saying. Like the lawyer's actually making that argument in court right now. So, I mean, in some ways, how do you kind of combat that? So just as a
very, very difficult. Yeah, I mean, this is weaponized, right? So this is like getting an exoskeleton. I don't know if you know what an exoskeleton is. So it's So if you take a 90-pound weakling and put him in a crowd of muscular guys, the muscular guys are going to beat him up every time. Give him an exoskeleton, he's going to kick everyone's ass. So now Twitter is like a social exoskeleton for intellectual 90-pound weaklings. That's
wow. Can you just repeat that again? Twitter is like an exoskeleton?
Yeah, intellectual exoskeleton for 90-pound intellectual weaklings, right?
Wow.
So they are all of a sudden amplified. Our friend Gobar, actually, who gets away with absolute rubbish, okay, just because he has 1 million followers. So why should that be so? If he's speaking rubbish, it doesn't matter whether he's speaking, whether he has 1 follower or 1 million. He's still rubbish. And yet, the fact that he has 1 million followers or whatever the follow count is, I don't know, it gives a lot of traction. So this is what happens. And now you have ways and means of it. So now it's gone down to a science, and you know what gets you followers. So you peddle that kind of content. Kangana Ranaut is an example. So you keep saying that, and people will follow you. There are people who want it. It's like a safety cocoon. You have this make-believe world of a certain kind of things happening, and we are a certain kind of people and everything. And once there's a body of people who believe in all those things, you feel comfortable in that, because that's what gives you comfort as well. And then all of a sudden, you guys are all amplified, because all of you are like 10 million of you. So, and Twitter allows you to be heard. Now the question is, do you censor or do you make them accountable? So censorship is probably a bad idea, because it's just one bunch of people who are going to say snip this, snip that, and if you get a couple of villains there, and that's over. So definitely you want to make them accountable. Now the problem is, how do you make them accountable when everything is real time? If I went out on Twitter and said something really incendiary, how is Twitter responsible? They could, of course, delete my tweet after some time, but they take some time to even process that.
Yeah.
There are billions of tweets a second.
I mean, I don't think we are at that stage. But the big challenge is, right, how do you delete something? I mean, there are objective things that need to be deplatformed, and then there are subjective things, right? So, for instance, child pornography, everyone will agree, is an instant, takedown, right? But fake news or manipulated media, right? Most recently with our friends from the IT cell, when they released the toolkit or whatever, and Alt News debunked it as fake news, and Twitter promptly tagged it as manipulated media. Who enforces? Twitter did, but then who counters the enforcement? Police actually goes to the Twitter office to look up employees, right?
Yeah.
In my head, it was really funny, because all of them were working from home. I think
and they went at 8 p.m.
Yeah, I think they went looking for the Twitter machine inside the Twitter.
They went at 8 p.m. What do you think? It was an agency.
Yeah. So man. I'm guessing they went to beat up the Twitter machine or whatever. But that's the problem, right? Here, when we talk about enforcement, everyone has a different set of worldviews, and unless it's something as objective as child pornography, we'll get into extreme gray zones, which is why this regulation, we'll explain in detail, but it won't have elegant solution at the end of it. Spoiler alert.
And just to add to one thing Naren said, I don't know if it's possible to have one blanket set of rules for everybody. Like, should the standards for somebody with, to Naren's point, 1 follower be different from those who have 1 million followers? You can argue that when you have 1 million followers, you have some sort of responsibility, because you have that sort of, you have that kind of reach. It's not, I don't think there is any clear-cut elegant solution at all, given the current speed of things and the current state of AI, ML, or whatever the case may be. But one interesting solution that I've seen being tossed about, I don't know what stage of development this is in, is when some piece of news or one tweet or something gains incredible velocity. It doesn't matter where it originates from, whether it originates from somebody who has 1 million followers or 1 follower, across platforms, be it YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, whatever it is. then it will be looked into. It's not really about is this traveling too quickly? And once that velocity is there, then the platforms will have an objective pair of subjective pair rather of human eyes on it. And this is the other thing, right? This brings into play so many different questions. Section 230, content moderation, and these challenges for platforms around the world. And we've seen these platforms from Twitter to YouTube to Instagram, thankfully not LinkedIn, strangely enough, who are struggling with all sorts of content moderation, where to draw the line. And of course, what is kosher in one country, sometimes literally kosher in one country, might not pass muster in another country, which has a completely different set of values, and where translation errors, etc., might happen. So if Facebook operates in Thailand, for instance, do they need Thai content moderators to understand nuance and all that? So
and this was the classic problem that happened in Myanmar, for example. I mean, when I was looking this topic, there was like this whole Myanmar had all the riots and all that stuff, and Facebook was actually something that fueled it. And
not riots, the genocide.
I mean, sorry, my bad. But when that entire thing was fueled by that, the biggest problem that Facebook had was there weren't language moderators who could understand what was being posted and be able to filter that. So by the time the translation happened and they could realize that a certain post was insightful or of any sort, it was often like up there for 24, 48, sometimes even longer hours. And that post then eventually, I mean, Facebook, in fact, even till date is struggling to kind of work on the translations for that. And on that related note, actually, this is where it also comes down to a lot of these platforms, what they're trying to do right now is filter on the basis of some kind of agreed upon objective truth, right? Where they're like, okay, is this statement patently false or is this statement actually true, right? And that is one step. I mean, it does work to some extent where, I mean, to be honest, where Trump, to some extent, where it worked and there was a lot of universal acclaim other than a lot of the kooks about Trump's banning, was he was making a lot of patently false statements. And there eventually they said, you know what, if you continue making these patently false statements, we will stop your ability to make these statements. We're going to take away your platform to do that. And that's where they deplatformed him. But then again, I mean, see, this is where it comes down to. I think, Tony, you were saying this, I think you mentioned it maybe on your Facebook or somewhere, where you said this point about the truth covered by another country is so weird and different, right? When, say, you watch a news story that's being covered by another country, like say BBC, whatever, and they're talking about the ground reality either in India or in Kerala or something, and you cringe when they take such a simplistic or generalized view of your nuanced context, right? And that's where truth actually gets kind of disaggregated in some way. And so you don't know what exactly is that exact definition of truth, whether, this guy, it's not as clear as this guy is right and this guy is wrong, as we can probably infer from that Israel-Palestinian conflict right now, which is just a muddled mess. There are a lot of contexts where there is a real objective truth and an objective falsehood, but there are a lot of contexts where it's all muddled up right in the middle and there is no clear way to draw a line there.
Yeah.
And so, you go ahead.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think all of
muddled mess is so great.
Yeah. I think we should get to what is the rule, though, because I mean, that's been very fairly clearly laid out, and it is in effect as of our recording, which is on 29th May. So what had actually happened was there was an initial, IT rule that was laid down in 2000, and then further, added on in 2011. And obviously, I mean, it's time for revision now, because since 2011 and 2021, several things have changed, social media and otherwise, right? So actually, this draft rule was proposed in 2018 and, it's coming into effect now. Actually, it was notified in February this year and it's in effect now. So it applies to several things, including OTT platforms, digital news channels and social media intermediaries, right? And the word intermediary is important, right? So what the term intermediary states is that a platform like, let's say, Facebook or Twitter merely acts as a channel where anyone can publish their content without it being touched upon or edited, right? And Facebook or Twitter are just intermediaries and therefore not legally liable in this case, right? So this is a protection that is very important for them to operate, because imagine the scenario where anything you or I say on Facebook or Twitter causes them to be dragged to court. That would be unviable.
Section 230 equivalent, right? This is what is called Section 230 in the US.
Oh, okay.
Pretty much, right? No, pretty much, right?
Please use the metric scale of sections. What is this? Yeah. So, and in this regard, in the new IT rules, what the government has done is made a demarcation between social media intermediaries and significant social media intermediaries, right? And significant social media intermediary is any platform that has over 50 lakh users, right? So, which practically means every, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp even, right? So all of these channels now become significant social media intermediaries and fall within the purview of the law, where they've laid down very sort of stringent conditions, saying there needs to be a physical person who is an Indian citizen who resides in India, who will be responsible for any of the content moderation requests or things that the government deems is not worthy of being on social media be taken down, right? And they have like only 36 hours to act in case a takedown request is put in, and some 72 hours to respond, and 15 days and stuff like that. But the basic point is, we saw that even without a person being in charge in Twitter, the police just arbitrarily went there, right? And the moment you give a law to, the people enforcing it, you are asking for trouble, as we've seen several times over the lockdown, where people have been beaten up for stepping out, asked to do frog jumps. There was a video from Bangalore where, because there was, randomized testing, someone was basically, manhandled and beaten before they put the nose swab into him, right? So it's not a great idea giving more power to the state in simple terms, and especially if there is a person at risk. So what happens if the social media intermediaries don't comply is that they lose this protection, which was Section 79, which said you are an intermediary. So if you don't apply, or if you don't put in a person in charge, if you don't comply with these 2021 regulations, then basically any post on Facebook or Twitter can cause the government to drag the social media intermediary to court. And that's pretty massive.
I mean, this is where, the fundamental challenge here is, in the language that you read out as well, for someone like the US, where most of these intermediaries are physically based, it would be more, they have their physical jurisdiction over these intermediaries, so they can maybe extend their reach to those people. But for, think of it this way, where a very influential NRI is posting something on one of these channels about India and gaining a lot of traction in India, this entire thing goes out for a toss, because Indian government has no jurisdiction whatsoever about content that's causing heavy influence in India, because in their rule itself, they talk about an Indian citizen who's residing within India, right? They literally cannot do anything, and then they will have to start going outside the bounds of the law, where they'll start harassing that person from whatever they links they have to India in whatever way, and doing that way, which the government is known to have done previously, at least in some way.
No, but there's another provision, right? Which is you can simply withhold that content in India. And I think there are several Twitter accounts right now.
That's what they want, basically. Yeah.
Which is also now, it's unfair. The way the Indian government seeks to control the media is still so primitive in terms of print media in some way, where, one, they are trying to control something which is, once they start trying to control it, Streisand effect means it goes all over the place in whatever way, where people are just going to kind of figure out the way to get the content. Because the internet is in any kind of free country where you don't have overarching, absolute controls over every fiber cable that's coming and going out of the country and filtering every kilobyte of data, you're not going to be able to control that. And even in totalitarian regimes like
China, they're not worried about every kilobyte of data. They're only worried about the high momentum stuff. So till it's high momentum, really no one cares. So only when it becomes, and then they want to have the power to take it down. Now, under the circumstances, it is not as draconian as China. there is a reasonable amount of time. That's
Low bar.
Yeah,
Very low.
but but what they want to do is they want to be able to inflict retribution. So this is worrisome because we need, and even autocrats, I would argue that even autocrats need free information, because you can't, like someone like Putin cannot rule all of Russia on his own. He needs his minions. How does he know that his minions, some really bad people, are doing things that he wouldn't do himself if no one's allowed to report it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the recent critic of his, I mean, all that was amplified through the internet in any case, right? Yeah, Navalny. Yeah.
And if he is not able to, if he doesn't know, if he has no way of knowing what's happening on the street, and he can't go personally check, then at some point of time, okay, his popularity will be so low that it will sort of, everything will collapse, and if it does, he will be killed, dismembered in the street. It's not like democracy. He can't sort of fade away. He'll be found and killed. Yeah. And it is possible to survive like this. North Korea has been doing this for like 7 decades, and they're going okay. But not everyone, not everyone is North Korea. So
yeah. And I mean, I think to put a crude analogy to this, right, it's basically like the government has said, now you appoint a hostage. So anytime we want something to happen, we can put a gun to their head, right?
Exactly.
Earlier, it was like a, decentralized abstract entity. Now you put a chief compliance officer. So his or her neck is always on the line, right? And that's worrisome because, again, if all of this is subjective, basically whoever is in power gets to dictate, what the level of objective subjectivity.
Yeah, I want to see that job description for compliance officer.
Has a good lawyer.
No, and what will end up happening is obviously the person taking up this job is likely to be sympathetic to the, dominant ideology of the time.
Exactly.
Right? And there will be enough people applying for this job. So, and they will in some senses be overzealous and take down things on their own with this thing saying, okay, otherwise it's my neck on the line. We need to take this thing down. So it's a bad spiral in a complicated situation, right? So, but the other major thing, which is very clearly worrisome, is that other than this takedown thing, the new rules state that there needs to be a provision to trace the first originator of any kind of problematic content. And this is why... So in the overall scheme of things, Facebook and Google have said that they will comply as of yesterday or day before. Twitter has actually put out a couple of tweets saying, we want to respect the privacy of Indian citizens, to which moral lecture suitably followed from the authorities in India. WhatsApp has actually taken the government to court because of this first originator thing, because WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted, right? And that protects privacy. And like we discussed on that episode with PGK, actually the only way to break the WhatsApp encryption is via brute force, which is a police constable takes your phone by brute force and then screenshots everything, right? So, and this is extremely important because the moment you put in a provision or a backdoor to break the encryption or, trace the first originator, everything related to privacy goes for a toss, right? And there are significant problems with, people, bad actors being able to spoof this mechanism, and, then all hell breaks loose, right? And I think, Chuck, shout out to you. One book recommendation you had was Alchemy from Rory Sutherland, where he said that as opposed to the physical world where, the opposite of a good idea is a bad idea, in the real world, the opposite of a good idea can be a good idea, right? And the same thing with free speech and privacy. So the opposite of free speech, basically privacy and free speech go hand in hand, right? And it's very important that privacy is respected. So this first originator thing is actually like a majorly problematic piece of legislation.
Yeah, nothing more to add to that in case somebody legislates this podcast.
Yeah, I shall be the first.
From Agumacham after the present.
Yeah, and the whole point, I mean, the whole argument against this is, oh, why should you be worried if you have nothing to hide, right? And
I love that argument.
yeah,
that is brilliant.
it's
That's a
in
classic.
some senses like that small penis rule, right? The small penis rule is basically, if you want to write a book defaming someone, you basically describe the character exactly as is, and then also say that this character has an extremely small penis. So the idea is that the person in question won't come and sue, because then he's admitting that he has a small penis. So
he'll be taken born apart.
Yeah, this is when did you stop beating your wife?
Yeah. So
interesting.
Yeah, so that's the whole problem, right? I mean, it's not about nothing to fear, therefore nothing to hide. And basically, there is a question of legality versus safe space, and everyone is allowed to have a safe space. It should be a fundamental basic right of human existence, which is now being questioned because human existence is no longer physical, right? It's also virtual. So what we discuss on our private WhatsApp group shouldn't be anyone's, it shouldn't end up in anyone's hands, right? So yeah, and also equally they have other problematic, clauses, right? Like doubling the period of data retention. So and all of this basically means that you can, go back in time and sort of act on things which shouldn't be acted upon, in all honesty. But the grayness of the entire situation makes everything complicated. Right?
Yeah, I was recently reading about one of the first ever social networks on the internet, way before even Orkut and stuff. So I think it wasn't even a browser-based platform. It was something called the Well. And I'm not sure if you've heard about this at all. The Well stands for Central.
Well, of course.
Yeah, yeah. I'll send the link across. It's one of those wired long reads, and how the community, etc., came up with. And I was just looking through the type of conversations that they were having on that platform, the topics that were discussed, people being very open with their drug lives, for instance. And this is like long back in California, way in the 80s and all that, before drug laws were, I'm guessing even during the Reagan era. And I was like, wow, okay, just even that conversation to happen. The internet at that point of time, such a small community of people, you don't need to really care about what you're talking about over there beyond offending a group of, say, 10 or 15 people who are part of that community or that particular thread. And I was just like thinking, wow, this like come such a long way, where right now we have to be so careful about whatever we put up online, not just because of government, but what other people might think, and whether we'll be called out by somebody else because of something else, or whether cultural consciousness will shift so much that something that is kosher today will be taken as an offense sometime later in the future, and then your job prospects in the future. So all these things, you have to think about and think, wow, we have come a long way. And again, reminded me of that one piece again. Are the humans even ready or equipped for the internet? It sometimes made me think, hey, what would happen if actually the internet was just taken away? How would like life be different? Would that be a net positive or a net negative? Maybe that's a discussion to have for another simplified episode.
Just an addendum to your other point, which was about how the Web 1.0 was in some way, was that there was this the first iteration of the internet, actually people were the most free in talking, not just because it was this closed community, but it was also because most online identities were entirely anonymous and non-linked, right? I mean, if you remember one of the first on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog, right? That was the Web 1.0. But like if you look at Web 2.0 in any way, it's all about not only does on the internet does everyone know you're a dog, but knows where you live and what your kennel looks like. Yeah. So that's the fundamental difference right now, and that rounds back to this particular topic because everyone has their identity.
Yeah, there's one more interesting question. Okay, so till now, even today, you have a reference point for news that is curated content available on newspapers and news channels, right? So you assume that because someone is actually, a responsible corporation is either printing it or broadcasting it, that it is true, or there is some truth in it, or it is curated, verified, or whatever it is. And this is now diminishing. So news channels itself, even moderate news channels like Republic are often guilty of something that might not be entirely true. Whom do you believe? So what happens, the question is, what happens when this vanishes entirely? So what do people take as a reference point? So is everything is just a sort of undifferentiated blob of information? How do you know what is true and what is not if you're going to be this thing, other than what the majority says? So this is what happens when you're on Twitter. If you see someone, a tweet which has had 100,000 or 50,000 retweets, would you assume that is true as opposed to something that I said which had just one tweet? So what I'm saying is we are moving towards a world where everything is going to be sort of decided by this. So isn't it sort of logical that whatever these guys are doing may not be right, but that it has to be regulated or people have to be held accountable at some point? Because I'm just thinking aloud, because instinctively my gut feel is that nothing should be no one in power should have the power to censor, because that's but at the same time there is just now like a million voices can drown out one voice far more effectively than a government can. So
yeah. No, but I mean, the question is who enforces, right? Like, does the platform do it, or do you allow the
it has to be the government. If we know of Mark Zuckerberg, even though he's a good man and he will win the Nobel Prize for Peace soon, he may not be, he may not always be good, right?
And then like that, and as that eternal line says, who will watch the watchmen, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So Naren's slight counterpoint there is that if you look at it, the government or the party in power, their incentive is to come back to power again in 5 years, right? So you're already compromised in terms of there has to be an inherent bias in terms of what content they deem fit to take down or not, as opposed to a Facebook where it's like it doesn't matter, it shouldn't matter which side it's coming from, because that's not their incentive. So I mean, I don't entirely agree.
Would you rather have a corporation or a political party? Yeah, it's a very difficult question. It's like do you want I don't know, do you want Roman Polanski or Jeffrey Epstein in charge of the kids? It's not it's not a good choice.
So it's murky and complicated and there are no clear-cut answers is basically what I'm getting away from this conversation. And we're not talking about breakfast.
We are talking about fast food.
There was some simpler. I remember when mass communication meant the sermon by the priest on Sunday. But so there are other aspects to this new rules as well. It also wants to censor OTT content, right? And it doesn't want to really censor it. Rather, it indicated that it wanted to censor. And basically what happened as a result was that I think there was a controversial series on Amazon Prime called Tandav or something, which I didn't watch, but I mean, there were some scenes that had to be deleted and apology scroll put in and stuff like that. So basically what happened as a result is, one, obviously all OTTs will now shy away from, edgy content. Two, they've moved towards self-regulation, and 17 OTTs have actually released, sort of self-regulation guidelines just so that the government doesn't interfere. But as per the rules, right, there are actually 3 levels of, review for OTT content. One is self-regulation by applicable entity, then self-regulation by a body of, self-regulating body of applicable entities, and then oversight mechanism by the central government, which basically pretty much means censorship of OTT content as well, right? So again, that's going to be problematic. And the other part is about digital news media channels, like which is why we shut down the third slip, because now those also come under the purview of censorship or legal action. So that's the broad strokes of what this new IT ruling is. So I mean, there's no way Facebook and Twitter are going to get banned in India, if anyone's wondering. But these are the regulations in place, and if they don't comply, the government can take away its intermediary protection.
Yeah, so basically anything that is put up on the internet can be subject to this, which makes me think that if you're a content creator, the best possible space to get into right now is instrumental rock music. Because the worst, if they find certain chord patterns offensive, then I don't think, then I think time is up for our species.
Yeah. You can only commit minor offenses.
Actually,
it depends on the scale of things.
No, but Naren, but interestingly enough, to counter my own point, you might remember that, and Sriket will definitely know this, that the Catholic Church had outlawed the so-called tritone because it gave this devil's note. So it was called the devil's note and all that, the base of the blues and heavy metal and all that. So even instrumentals can be, if they say, oh, this scale is anti-national or something like that, going from major to minor, or playing C minor after A minor or something like that.
I wonder at what point will Tim Berners-Lee be brought into court
for just creating. You did this mess. You should call all these guys DARPA, Vincent Cerf, and Tim Berners-Lee. You guys created this mess.
Then afterwards, eventually someone will go and dig up Gutenberg.
Although he didn't actually do all that much.
There was a South Park episode, where they actually turned off the internet and turned it on again, and everything was fixed. So maybe that's what we should do.
South Park is so brilliant. So my kids are complete devotees of South Park. And on the odd occasions I'd seen it in the past, I found that Eric Cartman very offensive. So I just stopped watching. And then I saw a few episodes, and then I realized how amazingly awesome it is. So
I have never seen a parent so proud of his kids for watching South Park. I had to hide Sidney Sheldon novels from my mom. Anyway, circling back, Tony. On that note, I don't know. I don't know if there's too much of a conclusion to be drawn over here. Every day is a new adventure.
No. So pretty much, I don't think too much changes for the regular user, etc. It's just that you will see more of content and accounts being taken down, and it is likely that it is going to be voices of dissent, which is not a good thing. We are dissenting further and further to the basement of democracy.
Circling back to the beginning of the episode, this feels like an episode where we give people the vada without the pav.
But hey, that's also a tagline, I suppose, or simplified.
No carbs before barbs. Okay.
Wow.
That's absolutely the most brilliant thing.
We've reached the natural end of this episode at this point.
So
get us the bill.
Thanks everyone for joining in, and stay safe, stay unregulated, and stay simplified.
Wow.
Woohoo.
Bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed that show. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Siet and Cred. We really appreciate the support. It is what makes this possible. So it was a fun week on Cyrus Says. We had guests like Dolly Singh, we had Guneet Monga, we had Kamya Jani of Curry Tales, and Cock and Bull, as we always did. Do check it out. I think you'll really, really enjoy that. On Paisa Vaisa, we crossed 300 episodes, and Anupam was joined by Akhil Handa, the digital head of Bank of Baroda. All Things Policy discussed topics like the 100 years of China's Communist Party, the Facebook versus the Government of India case, and the evolution of Indian science. On the Wire Talk, Siddharth Bhatia was joined by Gautam Bhatia to discuss the Central Vista project and why it's attracting so much flack. Sadaf and Archit are back on the Non-Curry podcast, and this time they raise the temperatures as they discuss the beloved spice mirchi. On the Millennial Athlete, this week Tanvi and Shlok speak to Sarita Chauri, a visually impaired judoist. And finally, I want to ask you all to give a listen to the Triangle Offense. Anybody who has heard me talk on a podcast knows I can't shut up about basketball, and these guys know more about it than I do. So if you enjoy basketball, do check this out. Nishant and Monish do an excellent job with this show. I was one of their guests a few months ago, which is how I met them and tried to convince them to come onto the network, and they're finally here. So definitely do check this out. Show's available on all major podcasting platforms, but they also have a daily YouTube episode, which is available on the IVM Podcast channel. And with that, I hope to see you again next week.
Do you know Tamil? Tamil Puriyuma? Do your children enjoy great stories that inculcate good values? Hi, I am Ravishankar Balachandran and I host the Storytime Tamil podcast. I am excited to share a short story with great moral values every day. Listen to Storytime Tamil on the IVM Podcast app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts from.